Hey there guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who book review, and today, as promised, I'm going to be reviewing this particular Doctor Who book, and it is of course Vampire Science. Now you're probably wondering why I've decided to read it and review it. Basically, TJ Productions, who some of you may know, if you don't know I'll leave a link to his review of this book. I've had this book for, well, since 2013, and I just haven't got around to reading it until last week, well, sometime last week, and he recently reviewed it, and I thought, I'll give it a go and see if it, because he said it was a bit overrated and said he was a bit disappointed by it, and I thought, well, I'll have a read and see if that truly is the case, because a lot of people really do praise this book. But before we get into my thoughts and the general consensus, I'll just show you sort of what the product looks like and from front to back and side. So yes, as you can see, it's a really nice cover. I got this second hand from Amazon, so you can see my copy is quite creased and a bit dirty, but hopefully I will get a decent copy at some point. So it's written by Jonathan Blum and Kate Orman, and of course I reviewed another Kate Orman book a while ago, which was Return of the Living Dad, so if you want to check that review out, please do. And then you've got a bat here, and of course you've got the seal of the President of the United States, which is sort of like a logo on there, and it's incredibly pink. It's actually a really nice cover, I do like this. So you've got the spine, so it's quite nice, quite stands out on the shelf quite nicely. Got the 90s BBC logo there, and at the top we've got a picture of the front cover, the blurb, and sort of the pricing there, so yeah, the barcode, and you've got copyright guff there. So yes, I'll read you the blurb, and I'll give you my thoughts and opinions of the story. So yes, in the days when the Time Lords were young, their war with the vampires caused trillions of lives on countless worlds. Now the vampires have been sighted again in San Francisco. Some want to coexist with humans using genetic engineering and a macabre experiment to find a new source of blood, but some would rather go out in a blaze of glory, and UNIT's attempts to contain them would provoke another devastating war. The Doctor strikes a dangerous bargain, but even he might not be able to keep the city from getting caught in the crossfire. While he finds himself caught in a web of old feuds and high-tech schemes, his new companion Sam finds out just how deadly travelling with the Doctor can be. This is another novel featuring the series of adventures featuring the Eighth Doctor. So yes, that's the blurb, and the page length is roughly about 283 pages, so it's fairly short. I wouldn't say it was the longest Doctor Who book ever. So what are my overall thoughts, and did I enjoy it? Personally, I thought it was a pretty good novel. I wouldn't say it was a disappointment, but I will agree with TJ that it is slightly overrated. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but I wasn't disappointed by it. I thought it was quite an engaging story with some really good characters. I quite like the characters in this, and it's the second. Technically, it is the second. Well, it is the second book in the range, because the book before this was the Eight Doctors, but a lot of people say that this is the true start to the range. And I haven't read the Eight Doctors, so I'm not really in a position to comment on it that much. So yes, I just thought I'd sort of give you some of the things I really liked about it. So like the characters I thought were great. And the characterization of the Eighth Doctor. I think Jonathan Blum and Kate Orman did a great job of capturing that really sort of sprightly character that he's got, and he's quite energetic. And he's also a very kind Doctor, much like the Fifth Doctor. And I can just hear Paul McGann's voice every time I would read a bit of dialogue in the book. So they did that really well. That characterization was brilliant. And I think the Eight Doctors got a lot of complaints because it didn't really introduce Sam all that well, which is the Eighth Doctor's companion. Up until a certain point, and then he gets a few more companions. Sam, I know a lot of the writers tried to kill off because they weren't particularly fond of her character. Personally, I think she's quite good. I thought she was okay, and it's more of a character piece really, because there aren't that many characters, but all of them are really sort of fleshed out, and they feel really quite realistic. So, for example, you've got some supporting characters such as Carolyn, and she sort of helps the Doctor and Sam sort of find a way to stop the vampires from provoking a war with units. And you've got James, who's Carolyn's sort of, I think she's husband or boyfriend. Well, let's just say partner. And he gets kidnapped by the vampires. And the story is mainly about Carolyn trying to find James and trying to seek out where he is, and it turns out James has been kidnapped by the vampires and he's hidden away in their sort of basement under the theatre, which is where they sort of hang out basically. And he's pretty much being tortured there. Like, he's mentally scarred by the experience, and he runs off, and he's quite annoyed with Carolyn. It's quite, like I said, the characters feel very realistic, and it really does show. It's like I said, it's brilliant for Sam, because it's even though the book is set sometime after the Eight Doctors, which because one of the bad things about it is that you don't really get to see the development of Sam and the Eighth Doctor's relationship, because it's skips a few years, so you don't see their development of their sort of interaction with each other, which is quite sad. But I think overall the chemistry, the writing chemistry, the dialogue that they are given works really well. And like I said, it was an engaging story, and if you like vampires and that kind of thing, I guess you might enjoy this, because can be quite gothic at times. And the main sort of bad guy the main vampire bad guy is called Slake, and I think his character's a bit of a cliche, just a sort of generic bad guy who wants to take over the world, and it's all about him. He doesn't want he wants to get all the young vampires to turn against the elder vampires, because they are well respected, and he doesn't want to be he doesn't want his life to be sort of restricted under certain rules, which are sort of set out by the good vampire, which is Joanna Harris. And she's not really good, but she starts to turn towards the good side. But you start to learn about her character and what she's been doing, and what her motives are, what her goals are. And there's a quite dark point in the book where a character called Dr. Shackle actually wants to commit suicide, because he's just feeling really depressed, and he feels like there's no hope for any of his patients anymore. He's just given up, and it gets to a point where he wants to locate the vampires so he can actually turn into a vampire. I won't tell you whether or not he does turn into a vampire, but you probably worked it out already. And I won't tell you who he gets bitten by, because it was quite a shock to me when I realised that actually the vampire who wants to turn him can't turn him, because the Doctor told him or her not to. So I thought that was quite interesting. There's some really nice ideas in there. The Doctor actually nearly dies at one point, and you're starting to think if he's actually dead or not. So that was quite tense. That's sort of towards the end. I think one of my main complaints with the book, that sometimes it does drag on quite a bit, and I do feel that even though it does make room for character development and gives a chance for the characters to be fleshed out, I do think that some of the chapters could have been taken out, but that's just my personal opinion. There's a few chapters where I just felt like, when's something going to happen? When is something major going to happen? But I mean, to be honest, I did enjoy it. I thought it was a pretty good book. Not the best book I've ever read, because I have read better books. Like Shakedown was amazing, and Prison of the Daleks was good, and I still enjoyed it. I wasn't disappointed by it, but it's just a pretty good book. So I think for my overall score, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. I think that's about reasonable, 6 or 7 out of 10. I can't quite decide. But yeah, I would recommend it if you're a fan of the Eighth Doctor. For the characterisation is spot on, brilliant, and yeah, it's just a pretty good story. So I think that pretty much concludes my review for Vampire Science. Like I said, I will link TJ's video down below so you can check that out. and feel free to check out my other Doctor Who book review. So comment down below, tell me what you thought of Vampire Science if you've read it, or if you've read any other 8th Doctor books. And yeah, I shall see you next time for my DVD review of Delta and the Bannermans. So take care, and I shall see you then.